I find myself at a complete loss, not only unsure of where to even begin, but also uncertain of what to say when I do. I suppose the first and most important thing I can say is that I managed to secure a very good lawyer. Her firm is one of the top-rated firms in my area, especially when it comes to representing men in divorce cases. Rather than delegating my case to someone else on her legal team, she took it on personally. From the very beginning, everyone at her firm has been nothing but kind and supportive, making it clear that they care about more than just the money they'll make from the case. My lawyer, Nadia, has gone above and beyond to help me not only legally, but emotionally as well. She has shown a genuine concern for my well-being and sanity as I navigate this nightmare. After agreeing to take on my case, Nadia and I went through the usual forms I needed to fill out, which included listing all of our property, as well as providing estimates of both mine and Mary's income. Once we had covered the basic paperwork, I explained to her about the car accident and what I had witnessed just before it happened. At that point, she asked me if I had undergone an STD panel. I explained that I had, and that the results came back clean. She then asked if I had documented Mary's infidelity with pictures or video. I told her that, at the time, I hadn't been thinking clearly enough to do that. Upon hearing this, Nadia immediately contacted a private investigator that her firm often works with and set up a meeting for us the next day. I live in a fault-based state, meaning that even though I knew Mary had been unfaithful, I needed hard evidence to ensure the divorce proceedings would go in my favor. Nadia assigned one of her staff members to act as the intermediary between me and Mary's father for any communication or necessary drop-offs involving the kids. I arranged for the kids to stay with their mother the upcoming weekend and following week, and that was intermediary. At that point, Nadia asked if I had arranged for therapy, both for myself and my children. I explained that while I had scheduled my first therapy appointment for later that week, I hadn't yet broached the subject with the kids, as I hadn't told them anything about the divorce or the situation at that point. She assured me that as soon as I felt they needed professional support, she would provide me with a list of therapists she could recommend. Nadia's genuine condolences for what I was going through felt sincere. I've never had much of an affinity for lawyers, but I think I may have found one who actually has a soul. After this, she gave me a list of things I needed to gather and tasks I needed to complete before our next meeting. Much of the advice she gave me aligned with things I had already read in various online forums. So when she told me to go to the drugstore to buy 2 DNA testing kits, I didn't think much of it, knowing it was a standard procedure. That night, after bringing the kids home, I did the cheek swabs for both me and the kids, sealed everything up, and mailed the kits off the next morning after dropping the kids at school. 2 days later, on Friday, the intermediary dropped the kids off with their grandfather for the weekend. Later that day, I was just coming back from lunch at work when I received 2 email notifications from the lab where the DNA tests had been processed. I waited until I was back at my desk to open them. The first email contained the results for my son, Michael, and confirmed that he is indeed my biological son. However, when I opened the second email and read the results, it felt like my world collapsed in an instant. My daughter, Carrie, was not my biological child. I read the results over and over, hoping I was misunderstanding them, but the truth was undeniable. I felt like my soul had been ripped from me. The pain of that realization was so overwhelming that it's difficult to put into words. As I tried to make sense of my next steps, my thoughts shifted to Mary. Had she known all along that Carrie wasn't mine? Had she even suspected? The thought of confronting her with this was terrifying, but I knew it was inevitable. Nadia had already arranged for a private investigator to follow Mary after the accident, but given her current state, she hadn't been leaving the house much. Still, Nadia asked me to bring in Mary's old cell phone, which I found in a drawer at home. The private investigator was able to access all of her apps as if he were using the phone himself. What he found was damning. There were countless nudes sent and received, along with messages and sexting exchanges that contained enough admissions of guilt to sway any judge in my favor. With solid evidence in hand, Nadia and I knew it was time to confront Mary. We thought it best to do so in her office, where things could be controlled and kept as civil as possible. When Nadia called Mary's mother's cell phone in front of me, I heard Mary's voice for the first time since I left the hospital. Nadia got straight to the point, telling Mary that we needed to meet so she could explain a few things. Mary was surprisingly willing to talk, saying she had been waiting for this conversation. She mentioned that she didn't have a lawyer yet, but agreed to meet with me the following afternoon. That day, I barely made it through work. I spent most of the day on the verge of tears, nauseous and unable to keep lunch down.